This video was sponsored by Surfshark VPN. Oh no, a firewall. Hey, I'm... what's a cool name? Zane. Zane, the computer hacking guy. You give me a mainframe and I'll hack it. Except not really, because hacking is illegal. So I'm Zane the... computer science major? Point is, I don't like the man mining data from me and selling it off to other the mans. I want to do all my computer stuff with utmost privacy, safety, and freedom. And that's exactly why I use Surfshark VPN. It stops websites from tracking my activity for nefarious purposes. And as a bonus, it allows me to get around region locks so I can, for example, enjoy Netflix shows from any region regardless of where I am in the world. Which will come in really handy when I go to Japan someday because I'm a computer guy and we usually like anime and Japan stuff. Right? That's a thing. Anyway, if you head to surfshark.deal/Arlo and enter the promo code Arlo, you'll get 83% off your subscription and 3 whole months completely free. If you value your privacy, it's a no-brainer. Now, if you'll excuse me, there are like 5 mainframes here I gotta deal with. Hello, my wondrous and enchanting friends. The concept of the Nintendo Switch quote-unquote Pro probably needs no introduction. It's the idea of a mid-generation console kind of refresher. The same thing Sony did, the same thing Microsoft did, just a more powerful Switch that is just better at running games, higher frame rates, higher resolutions, that kind of thing. Obviously, I've been talking about this off and on for quite a while now. Did a whole entire video about the idea of a Lite and a Pro. That was before the Lite was even revealed, and obviously, as rumors have surfaced, I've been kind of touching on the subject in my news roundups, but the rumors have become so strong and so frequent that I thought it was time to give the subject its own dedicated discussion. Usually there's always like a straw that broke the camel's back. You know, there's always like that one rumor that finally puts me over the edge. Like, okay, I gotta talk about this. And in this particular case, that was the idea of a quote-unquote Switch Pro getting a mini LED screen. But we'll talk about all that in a bit. I'm gonna go over all of the different like rumors that have come up so far and kind of my take on them and what I think it might be and if and all that stuff. And if you haven't joined me for these kinds of discussions before, I will reiterate, I do believe it is coming. I have reached the point where I pretty much believe the rumors. If more than one source says something is true, I pretty much believe it. Just because, like, it's been happening so often recently. I used to be the type that's like, oh, all these rumors and they're so lame, and then every once in a while one is true. Not this time. Not this last, like, year. Just like this calendar year right here. They've all been true. I guess even before. Even last year, too. Like, the people were right about the Switch Lite. They were right about 2 SKUs coming. That was the Switch Lite and then the Switch with the better battery life, the upgraded chip. And then, of course, all the other games. Almost nothing has been a surprise. Gauge of Calamity was a surprise, so that was pretty cool. But almost nothing has. So I do think it's happening, and I do think it's happening next year. And so let's get into what people are saying about it. The first strong rumor is that, yes, it is coming next year. A lot of people are saying that, and this is the sources are all, what is it? People in the supply chain or something. I'm getting all my information from Nintendo Life. They have a really nice little, like, gathering of information here. They do all the reporting. If I shout, I can't possibly shout them out enough. They are my primary source for Nintendo news, so go read Nintendo Life if you don't. And so what they have here, it is a little bit hard to separate the actual, like, strong rumors from just analysts making predictions. And so, the analysts themselves have also predicted that it's coming next year. But there have been some actual rumors that it is for real coming. The general consensus seems to be that it's coming earlier in the year. My gut instinct tells me later in the year, just because the original Switch came earlier in the year, like in March, at the beginning of Nintendo's, or was it the end of Nintendo's fiscal year? I'm not exactly sure. But it's hard for me to see Breath of the Wild 2 coming so soon after Age of Calamity. I feel like they need at least a year of distance, and then it's hard for me to see Nintendo pushing a Switch Pro without having a game to like really package it with, and because that's the whole thing, is like, if you're doing a Switch Pro, I'm calling it a Switch Pro, by the way, it's not going to be Switch Pro. PlayStation Pro is the thing that's just the word we've been using. I imagine it'll be like Switch Plus or Switch Deluxe. I don't know. I'm just calling it Pro going forward because that's just the easiest thing. If the whole idea is like, it runs games better, you know, then there's almost no game in the Switch's library that would benefit more, at least as far as first party goes, than Breath of the Wild, just because it's a really big game, kind of struggles to run a little bit sometimes, could use some better resolutions and texture resolutions and all that stuff. So a Switch Pro would be so perfect for that. And like even in the past, like look at the 3DS XL. Sorry, the new 3DS XL. They released that alongside Majora's Mask 3D because that was a really good game. That was like a really big, nice 3D game, and they could give it a bunch of extra features like camera control and all that stuff with the new 3DS, and that's perfect. And Zelda's a really, really good fit for that naturally. So I feel like they would want to package it with Breath of the Wild. That's not necessary. And then the other thing too is manufacturing and supply has been so weird. It's hard if usually when like production has started, we get more strong rumors about that, and it doesn't seem like it's started yet. So it's hard for me to believe it's coming early next year. Again, I would imagine it was around March because that's the end of their fiscal year. That seems too soon to me. However, if you do look at that fiscal year, it does sort of make sense. Nintendo, they've had a really good fiscal year, mostly because of Animal Crossing, and then Switch sales have been going crazy. They're giving us all this like limited release stuff and specifically ending it at the end of their fiscal year next year, and their year ends in March. So it feels like they're building up all of this like fun like anniversary content, all this Mario stuff, and you know, obviously preying on FOMO, fear of missing out, and it's like they're trying to pack as much into this fiscal year as they possibly can. And you know, they don't want to just start the next year with a thud. They don't want to just like, you know, hit the ground running, but with their face on the ground. And if there was going to be a really, really major spring title, if there is one, we don't know about it yet. So naturally, the idea of releasing this Switch Pro and even doing other stuff with all of their different models, I'll talk about that in a bit, right there at the beginning of the next year, that could be a good move. That could make a lot of sense. That's a way to be like, we just had an incredible year, made the investors really happy, but what's next year? Well, here we go. We got this new version of the Switch coming. So that does make sense. So it's like, it's hard to believe, but it's also makes sense. Could they be poised to release Breath of the Wild 2 earlier than I expect? Any earlier, you know, maybe in the spring or the summer or something? Summer could potentially work. Still, I don't know, anywhere less than a year between Age of Calamity and Breath of the Wild 2. I don't really see it happening. It is technically possible, though, or they have a completely different title slated for next year that will, you know, maybe they'll reveal Super Mario Odyssey 2, or just some other game that we have no idea what it is, and that will utilize the Switch Pro and all that stuff. Who knows? Now here's another pretty strong rumor we had back in September. There were reports that Nintendo was asking developers to make their games, quote, 4K ready. This is not something I want to jump to conclusions about, because, like, here's the thing, is, like, I've heard a lot of people be like, oh, yeah, you know, a Switch Pro, it could do 4K, but I'm over here, like, I can't see Nintendo making that big of a jump when the Switch itself already struggles to do 1080p, even some of their major games, like Pikmin 3's coming out, and I'm super bummed, because it looks like it's 720p, and it's like, and that's a bummer. So I feel like just 1080p, 60 FPS, like, that's what my hope is for a Switch Pro, just across the board, at least, like, whoever patches it, you know, into their games or the first party games, 1080p, 60. I feel like that's the best we can expect, and it is what I want. But so this rumor is obviously pretty interesting, but as Nintendo Life points out, because they are much smarter and more researched than I, it says right here in this article, it is speculated that Nintendo will seek to leverage NVIDIA's DLSS AI upscaling techniques rather than pure 4K output. Basically, it's just kind of a nice little tricky upscaling thing. It doesn't sound like it's definitely going to give like native 4K visuals, but maybe it is possible for it to, you know, push a little bit higher than 1080p or, you know, something like that, because Switch games are already so scalable, and that's what's so exciting about the idea of a Switch Pro, is that, you know, you have all this dynamic resolution scaling, so in theory, you put that software on hardware that is more strong, it will utilize that hardware and say, oh, well then let's just up that resolution a whole bunch. So maybe them saying, hey, make your games 4K ready. Maybe it's not like we're gonna have a pure 4K system, but it would, you know, your game can utilize the hardware, and depending on the game, it can be, you know, displayed at a much higher resolution than maybe you even expect. So just like shoot for 4K. And we're seeing that with other stuff, like the Xbox One S is the lower end, lower power version of the next gen Xbox ecosystem. So I expected, you know, 1080p. pretty much from that. And then if you want to get like the 4K stuff, you get the Series X. But recently it's been revealed that there are some indie games that will be like native 4K, or at least pushing up to 4K on the Series X or on the Series S, just because like if your game doesn't require as much powerful hardware to run, then even the Series S is going to be powerful enough to push it up to higher resolutions. And that could be the same here. And especially if Nintendo is going to do, maybe they'll do multiple SKUs here. Again, some I'm going to talk about in a bit. That could be why they're saying shoot for 4K, because you never know what your game is going to need or whatever. And it might surprise us. Some games might be significantly higher than 1080p if they just don't, very simplistic game. Who knows? And that is certainly exciting. I do love that idea. But again, like I said, I'd go for 1080. Just like, give me 1080 at 60 on every first-party Nintendo title. I will be happy, but we'll have to see on that one. Okay, so next we have a rumor that technically should be tied to the rumor. It was part of the same report that the Switch Pro would be coming early next year. They also said that the console will benefit from improved interactivity and display quality. Display quality we'll talk about in a bit, because that's a separate rumor. Improved interactivity. I do not know what that means. It is possible that it would introduce some sort of other, I don't know, motion control thing. Like, the absolute best I can picture is like a camera or something, you know what I mean? Like just some little thing the Switch doesn't already have that can technically open up new things, but then of course you have exclusive software that utilizes it. So yeah, improved interactivity. It's hard for me to imagine that Nintendo is going to change the Switch too much, because that's going to split the user base, and that's going to be really weird. So I don't even know what that means. That's very, very vague, and we will talk about the idea of there's so many ideas to talk about here. I'm going to push this one aside, again, the idea of splitting the user base, and move on to the display quality, because this rumor just came out. It was just a little bit too late to go in my latest news roundup. The rumor is that the Switch Pro, like I said earlier, will use mini LED technology in its screen. And I didn't know this, but this is a mini LED is apparently kind of a hybrid between OLED and like LCD, because the Switch uses just a regular LCD screen, which means that it is backlit. So, you have your pixels and then you have a backlight lighting it all up, which of course can make for like the blacks aren't as black and rich, on the screen itself. And then you get, some like uneven backlighting and stuff. There's some potential problems. They're not a big deal. I mean, the screen is pretty great. But with mini LED, basically every individual pixel is illuminated itself. Each one produces its own light. And so naturally, this makes for a more evenly lit screen. And also, it conserves battery power, even though it's like a nicer thing, because if parts of your screen are black, those aren't being lit, it's not pulling as much power from the battery. So, in theory, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And then OLED is better, but that's a lot more expensive, and Nintendo obviously pretty much always wants to drive down costs, especially with their screens. They are notorious for cheaping out on their screens. So that would be really great. That would just make for just a sharper, crisper image, better on the battery, and that would be great. It would raise the price a little bit, but obviously all of this stuff gets cheaper all the time, every single year. I'd like that a lot. And like, if anything, this rumor right here, it's not even just exciting because it's another thing that would be cool about the Switch Pro. It's that it's another rumor about the Switch Pro. It's another thing, like it's another very specific thing that someone somewhere is coming up with, or even multiple people in some cases, which is again making me think, yeah, this is definitely real. This is definitely something that is coming next year, barring any delays or anything like that. So back on the subject of potentially splitting the user base, obviously the new Nintendo 3DS had a few exclusive games that just required enough processing power that they could not run on a basic 3DS. There were some games that were enhanced on the new 3DS, some like it was a Monster Hunter, I think was one of them, like Minecraft, I think was, for some reason, had to be on a new 3DS. This is something that technically Nintendo could keep doing, and I think it's a bad idea, and I don't see it happening. And I don't know if I don't see it happening just because I think it's a bad idea, because they do lots of things that I think are a bad idea. But the thing is, like, okay, well, one, it's a bad idea just because you make people mad. People who are like, oh, cool, on the consumer's end, oh, cool, you're releasing a game I want to play, and I can't, because I bought an old one. It's, maybe I even bought it a week before the new one came out, and now I can't play it. That makes me upset. But then even on Nintendo's end, who wants to put all of the money into a game that only some of these people are going to be able to play. That makes no sense. The Switch is selling so well right now. Their install base is, what is it, like 60 million or something by now? Just throw them all outside. You know, like, what? It's hard enough to make a game that succeeds on any platform, even on the Switch with its giant user base. You know, like, potentially you could release a game and it doesn't even sell that much. Do you really only want to be selling it to the few people who are buying the new one? Of course, over the years, that number will grow, but that's still, you don't want to fraction the user base, fraction the user base like that. Sorry, I'm getting all worked up. I'm stumbling over my words here. Can't even use fraction as a fracture, that's the word I'm looking for. Fracture the user base. You don't want to do that. And the Switch is just so, like, scalable. I mean, we've had such, you know, like, these third-party ports, these crazy ones like Doom and Wolfenstein and The Witcher and everything, where it's just like, clearly you can do a lot with scaling on the Switch. It's much more adaptable than Nintendo's previous systems. So it makes no sense to me to do anything that would fracture that user base. And then back on the interactivity thing, I don't know, like, making some sort of extra little thing, you know, like a camera or something. Like, you don't want to do that. I don't know, like, I suppose Nintendo is good at, like, coming up with a new, like, peripheral or something, and really only making, like, a couple silly little things for it. You know what I mean? Like, they could put a camera on the Switch Pro, and then it's like, oh, it's so that you can play Face Raiders 2 or something, and then it's like, okay, well, then that's done. You know what I mean? Like, technically, they don't have to follow it. They could just do it, and it's like, it offers, like, a little extra thing, but it's not something anyone's going to be crying over. So, I don't know. I really don't think they should change it too much. I don't think they should add anything too much. Just do a regular Switch, but more powerful, better at running games, no exclusive games. That's the way I would do it. Okay, so here's an idea that I have. It's not even like a really, really solid, like, plan of action. It's just kind of like, just here, it's open for discussion. This is kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, so PlayStation 4. Everybody was expecting, like, the PS4 Pro and, like, a PS4 Slim. But when Sony came out and revealed the PS4 Slim, they're like, this is not a separate Slim model. This is simply the improved version that will be replacing the old one. And I thought that was really interesting. Now, Nintendo kind of did this with their, you know, the one with the better chip and the improved battery life. They just kind of replaced the old one without a lot of fanfare, because it's really the same system. The fact that they did that already so recently makes me wonder if that is possible to happen again anytime soon. But the idea is there, that what if, and especially if they're telling everyone to make their games 4K ready, what if they plan on having 2 Switch revisions that would, you know, not 2 pros, but 2 enhancements? Because here's the thing, Nintendo is not going to be keen on lowering the price of the Switch anytime soon, if ever, because it's been selling so well. It's such a hot item. I think, if anything, they're only going to focus on making it more attractive. And, like, maybe years down the line, when it's near the end of its life, yeah, they'll start discounting it. But right now, I don't see that happening. So what I could see happening is, what if, just theoretically, we get 2 new upgraded Switches? One is just a more powerful Switch, again, like the other chip, but, you know, significantly more so. What if, like, it's probably just too great of an idea, too exciting to actually happen. What if we got my idea of a Switch Pro became the base model? The base $300 model became a Switch Pro, where it's playing games 1080p, 60 FPS. Then on top of that, we get the actual Switch Pro, which is like, you know, $400 or something, but it can do, like, way better visuals. I still can't imagine pushing full 4K. That's ridiculous, but, you know, much better. The kind of, like, more crazy stuff that people are imagining, much higher resolution, all that stuff. Maybe, you know, full 1080p screen or whatever. 1080p screen, that's another one I want. Even in the basic model, I want that. But I don't know, what if not? What if the base one has 720 and docked, it, you know, it's pushing those higher resolutions, and then the Pro has a 1080p screen. It's like the super deluxe version of the Switch for the hardcore hobbyists who just want power, you know what I mean? I think that could work. That is a way for them to make the Switch just more appealing and even get double dippers coming in, wanting the better stuff, without lowering their price, because they don't want to lower their price. They're not gonna lower their price. And this could even affect the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite could get its own version of just, you know, it's got the better chip and the better battery and all that stuff. I think that's an exciting idea, probably kind of pie in the sky, just because it's like I said, it's too perfect. It's too exactly what I would want, you know? Realistically, I don't see us getting like a super, super nice deluxe kind of thing. But we could, and I think it's a fun idea. Just like upgrade the base Switch, especially if they're gonna do any kind of revision to the Joy-Cons or anything. That would be really nice. Not holding my breath, but that would be cool. It's just like the regular Switch is going away. It's phasing out. Maybe they'll discount those just to get them out of the stores or something, bring them down to $250, just to get the new ones in, and then give us that big sweet deluxe. And, ooh, what if the rumors are true that we're getting a new one next year, but they're early next year, like in March, but that one is the just more improved base version. Then we get the Pro version in the holidays with Breath of the Wild 2. I don't know if that would, that might not be good to communicate both of those things at once, to be like, hey, here's a better Switch, but the nicer one is coming in the holidays, so you'll have to wait for that if you want that. They don't want to, I don't know, not cannibalize. They don't want to just, I don't know, distract people, make them want to wait. You know, they want people to buy Switches right now. So I don't know if that would happen, but I think it would be pretty interesting. This discussion has run quite long, and even so, I'm probably going to be kicking myself later when I think of another point I want to talk about, because I love talking about this stuff and the idea and the speculating and all that stuff. I love it, but gotta cut it off somewhere. Obviously, if this kind of thing happens, we'll learn about it soon enough. If it's early next year, we probably won't hear about it until next year. Again, they're not going to want to distract anyone from buying the Switch this holiday season. Even if it comes out in March next year, that would still make people mad. People, especially if it's the same price as the regular Switch. If it comes in March, people who got it for Christmas might be a little bit mad. But whatever, that's hardware. That's how hardware works. Maybe that's another good reason it won't come until the holidays. They usually wait until like September-ish to like release this new stuff. So maybe that alone is a reason to not believe that it's coming early next year, just because you don't want that holiday kind of anger. But point is, head on down to the comments, let me know what you want from a Switch Pro, what you think is likely. Do you think it's coming next year? Do you think it's coming early next year, packaged with Breath of the Wild 2? What is it? Go nuts, go crazy. Everybody do a whole lot of discussorizing about it, because I think this topic is just so fun and interesting. And I want me a Switch Pro. I want it real bad. I love the Switch. It really wowed me when it came out, but every single passing year, I get more and more, not annoyed, but just kind of done with the limitations. I want higher resolution, especially all these other systems coming out. I'm looking at the Series X and the PS5, and I'm getting pretty darn jealous. I got my big 4K TV and nothing really to play on it, so yeah, I'd really like an updated Switch. At least just the bare minimum. 1080, 60, bare minimum. Anyway, have a good day. I love you. Goodbye. Have a good day. Goodbye.